What's up, everyone? This is the Next Tape Podcast, episode 76, with Mikel, and
And Tanyka.
where we have conversations on different topics. So, we're going to be doing another Black History Month episode.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we did Black Panther and also Barack Obama.
Black
Uh,
Panthers. Let's make sure we say
yeah, sorry,
Panthers. I think
Panther.
you say Black Panther, and I'm thinking Chadwick Boseman. So
Yeah.
Black Panther.
That's it. Black Panthers or Black Panther?
Black Panthers, because we say Black
Thurs.
Panther, I'm
Oh,
thinking
okay,
Marvel.
okay. All right.
You know,
Okay. So
yeah.
Black Panthers. My my
Mhm.
apologies. And we're going to be talking about Aunt Jemima.
The real, the real people behind Aunt Jemima,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
as much as I possibly can with Uncle Ben as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get to it.
All right. So just as a lesson in the beginning, the reasons I believe that, so maybe I'm incorrect with this, but the reasons that the names Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben were changed are because the terms aunt whatever or
Hmm.
uncle whatever
Hmm.
back in the day was slave terms,
Hmm.
things you would call a slave. So obviously that's insensitive. So that's why the products changed the names. I can't remember what they called Aunt Jemima now because I don't really use those products. I can't tell you the last time I've used Aunt Jemima or Uncle Ben. Like, I think I ate Uncle Ben's rice like when I was like a kid. So I don't really remember, but I know Uncle Ben, they still have Ben in the name, but I don't remember what they call Aunt Jemima. But that
They
aside,
call it the Pearl Millen Wood.
oh yeah, that sounds familiar.
Come.
Yeah, and then I think Ben is like Ben something. I remember seeing it the other day. Um, but yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. So
Hmm.
this is going to be just an article kind of talking about where Aunt Jemima came from and who the person is that inspired that, or who's the face of that you would see.
Yeah.
Under the grass, it is barely noticeable, an unmarked grave covering one of America's hidden figures for nearly a century. You probably have never heard her name, but Nancy Green has likely been in your kitchen before.
Yeah.
Green created the Aunt Jemima recipe, and with it, the birth of the American pancake.
Hmm.
Um, I know there's a lot of conflicting stories of who created the recipe and whatever, who the face of Aunt Jemima is, because they would say the face of Aunt Jemima would change constantly throughout the decades.
Right.
But there was a person who did create the recipe
Hmm.
and it was sold to the company
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
owns the rights, obviously, to that.
Yeah.
So, quote, her face on the box, that image on the box was probably the one way that households were integrated. This was said
Hmm.
by Sherry Williams, who is the president of the Bronzeville Historical Society in Chicago, and she told ABC News this.
Hmm.
And I do have like a picture of I don't know if it's a box or like a news article. Um, but I will have that, I'll post that. Long before she pioneered that famous mix, Green was born into slavery in Montgomery County, Kentucky. After the Civil War, she moved to a deeply divided Chicago, becoming a strong voice at Olivet Baptist Church, which is the city's oldest Black congregation. The church was noted for its work to shield those who had escaped slavery, who arrived here in Chicago because there were many slave catchers in Chicago still pursuing people who were of African descent. I can't believe I said those words. Williams has been shining a light on Green's story for more than a decade, giving Underground Railroad tours of the neighborhood. In the past few years, she finally identified the exact location in Chicago's Oakwood Cemetery where Green was buried. saying, quote, I mean, who else has experienced slavery and then walked through all of the experiences of America? Jim Crow, segregation, lynching. Yeah.
Mm,
To Williams, Green is that essential worker that we should salute from today and times to come. To get Green a headstone, Williams needed the approval of one of her descendants. After a long search, Williams finally found Marcus Hayes. Um, Quote, when I found out about it, to be honest, I was shocked and excited at the same time. Living in the United States, some African Americans, as you may know, it's hard for them to go that far back to get who they're connected to. This was said by Hayes. Hayes remembers hearing stories of Green's pancakes, saying, quote, it was so good that the boys would now tell everyone. The milling company heard about it. They came and sought her out. This was again said by Hayes.
mhm,
And just like that, Aunt Jemima was born. It made its debut at the World's Fair in Chicago of 1893. Um, as legend tells it, Green sold 50,000 boxes of the now famous pancake mix.
nice.
Yep. She, sorry, hold on. She was the trusted face. Back then, anybody who would look at an African American woman cooking, they knew that they can trust her cooking, that she could cook. Damn straight. And
Mm,
this is said by Hayes. But for all of those years, ads by Quaker Oats for Aunt Jemima never mentioned Green. Of course not. Why would they? Green lived until the age of 89, but died after being hit by a car in Chicago in 1923. That is so sad.
mhm.
After
Yeah,
her death,
very.
sorry, go ahead.
I said very sad.
Yeah. After her death, female ambassadors hired by Quaker Oats continued the legacy. Lillian Richard was one of them. Richard put her small Texas community on the map, and as a result, Hawkins, Texas is considered the pancake capital of the world.
Mhm,
Unlike Green, Richard has her own headstone and a plaque in Hawkins. The town holds a pancake breakfast every year. Sounds like my kind of place.
mhm,
One of my cousins, she would dress up in the same type of clothing that my aunt Lillian had. She would get up and tell the story to those that attended the ceremony that did not know. And this was said by Vera Harris, who is a descendant of Richards. Harris added, quote, I believe that some people may have thought that those faces were not real, which, I mean, I did.
mm,
I mean, how many people actually really thought that the face on the Aunt Jemima bottle was a real person?
mhm,
I didn't think that was a real person.
mm,
Um, Now Harris and Hayes say those real faces and real stories are in danger of being erased. In June, PepsiCo, which is Quaker Oats' parent company, as we have discussed on this podcast, announced that the Aunt Jemima brand would be phased out by the end of September, as this was before it happened. But again, I think I understand why they were doing it. I don't necessarily disagree with
mhm,
why they're phasing out the name and the picture and everything like that
mhm.
because of what it represents in terms of slavery.
Yeah,
Again, this was all because of people creating ruckus about it, right? But I
I
think
was.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
I always thought it was like, bringing awareness towards like
Exactly.
not people. But
That's what I was going to say.
yeah,
I think it's important for people, which is why we're talking about it on this podcast,
yeah,
is that it's important to realize, okay, yes, the names of these brands are being changed because
yeah,
of XYZ, but
yeah.
we need to make sure we're talking about that XYZ, that
Mm-hmm.
those stories of those people don't get forgotten
Mm-hmm.
because now those brands no longer exist.
Yeah.
So again, like this is something that I think needs to continue happening throughout the years because even 10, 15 years from now,
Mm-hmm.
are we going to remember that there was products called Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben?
Uh,
And are we going to remember why it's not that anymore? And are we going to
I,
do our research?
yeah. Yeah, well, I
Um,
think, yeah, I don't know, to be honest with you, but
yeah.
there's Google, and
Yeah, no, I understand, but
yeah,
again,
yeah,
what I'm trying to get at is before all of this came into
yeah,
our vernaculars, we
hmm
were never thought to do the research
hmm
on things like this.
right,
So
right, right,
we're aware because
hmm
it's in what I would consider
yeah,
recent
yeah,
culture, popular
yeah,
culture at the time to discuss the stories behind the products. But 10, 15, 20 years from now, when
hmm
we already know the story,
hmm
that's something that, you know, we may not think about again, or
right,
at least pay as much attention to again.
hmm
Are our children going to know that story? Are
I don't,
they going to continue to remind people this
mm
product existed and here's the real story behind those products? That's what I'm more saying.
hmm uh,
Because if we didn't think to do it, what makes us think that our children are going to think to do it? But
unless
I think
they're
it's stupider as
unless
step on.
unless they're told to, do it, like from their parents,
But
like
from who?
it's like if they go to like a parent, well, one of their parents, like if they're told like to go into a grocery store and they pick out a pancake mix. And easily a parent could tell a story for what this pancake mix used to be, right? But like,
Maybe,
yeah, so
maybe.
like,
But again, I think I think you're giving a lot of um uh, uh what's the word I'm looking for? You're giving a lot to people because I feel like
hmm
it should be as easy as that.
yeah,
But people, especially today, we don't think to have those conversations.
yeah,
We don't have the time to have these conversations, especially if you're going grocery shopping for
yeah.
how many people you have in your family. You don't
hmm
think to have these conversations.
hmm
And I think a lot of conversation happens from the schools. When the schools
hmm
are having conversations on certain things, and then the
hmm
children are like, oh, guess what I learned in school today?
hmm
And they can create that dialogue. But
hmm
if the schools aren't doing that, because again, we've talked about it, I feel like Black History Month was something we never discussed really in school.
hmm
I felt like it was just like, oh, it's Black History Month on February 1st, and then we forget about it.
right, right.
Um, so unless those conversations are happening
hmm
in schools,
hmm
it's not going to happen because again,
right, right.
parents just don't have the time and don't necessarily always think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not saying that's right, but I'm just trying to say like it's just how it is.
hmm
So we talk about it now and it's great. We talk about it now.
Right, right, right.
And but when I think about the things that have happened in Black history,
hmm
I'm going to admit this isn't the first thing that comes to my mind. It is
hmm
now, like right
hmm
now, where I'm like, okay,
hmm
yeah.
hmm
But 10, 15 years from now, like we talked about Emmett Till and
hmm
other things that have happened that really shaped the civil rights movement that I
Right,
learned in college.
right.
That was 10 years or so ago. Those stories are never going to leave my mind, and I will tell my children about those things.
Mm.
But
Okay.
am I going to tell them about this? I don't know.
hmm
I hope,
hmm
but I don't know.
mm.
So that's the thing is it's really great to have people have awareness and change
Mm.
things
hmm
and understand like, we had this, we've had singing groups that do the same thing. The Dixie Chicks don't call themselves something anymore. They just call themselves the Chicks. Lady
hmm
Antebellum, they don't call themselves something like that anymore. It's a Lady A
hmm
because they're doing the research and realizing, ooh, bad idea. So I get that and it's great. But
Right.
we also, with that, have to remember to be aware of things and
Mm.
to not forget the stories behind the reason why these things were being changed.
Okay.
Guess we'll see how it is in the next couple of decades, I guess, if
Right, right, right.
remember this. But I think it's a good point that we don't want to forget.
Right.
Um, but anyways, to continue. The sudden news in the midst of this country's racial reckoning shocked both families, saying, quote, I was taken aback. I was really shocked. I knew people didn't realize that those were real people. And, to phase them out would kind of erase their history. This was said by Harris. Hayes worries about Green's legacy when the brand goes away, saying, quote, she's just not a character. I really want her legacy to be told that this is a real person and that this was her recipe, and she fed the world from her flapjacks. While some people might view the image of Aunt Jemima as antiquated or insensitive, Williams does not see it that way, saying, quote, no time ever have I heard anyone in my community say that this image was one that was derogatory. Um, I'm gonna tell you right now, it's the Gen Zs. But
Mm-hmm.
anyways, because I do feel like the newer generation is the more sensitive generation, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, you can't do that, that's wrong. And then we have to like do all these changes, which is like kudos to them to be like the Gen Z is really good at kind of pointing things out and saying what things need to change. But at the same time, it's like
Mm-hmm.
not everything needs to change because now you find something insensitive when maybe 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago, it wasn't seen as insensitive. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? So, um, I don't know. It's like a catch-22, I guess. But, um, so yeah. So she goes on to say, so I don't know where that sentiment is coming from. In a statement to ABC News, PepsiCo said, quote, this is a sensitive matter that must be handled thoughtfully and with care. We respect the women who have contributed to our brand story and will approach our rebranding with their heritage in mind. Pepsi
Mm-hmm.
also announced plans to commit $400 million dollars to various causes to help with diversity, but so far has not contacted Hayes or Green or announced a definitive future for the longtime brand. Hayes and Harris both hope Green and Richard are part of the future. We don't know what it could be called as long as she is somewhere in the mix. As we know, we already have the name of that brand. Call it Nancy Greens, Hayes said. She went on, it's not about the money, this is about the truth. After
Mm-hmm.
a decades long push, Williams was finally able to raise enough money to give Green a proper headstone and marker, which I will post. Um, but the headstone artist, Mark Hunt, carefully etched a face that will now be preserved for generations. A face America is finally getting introduced to all these years later. On the headstone, it says Nancy Green, the original Aunt Jemima, March 4th, 1834, died August 23rd, 1923, with a pancake, with pancakes, like three stacked pancakes. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Williams and Hunt are planning a plaque at Olivet Baptist Church as well, with more honors to come. The headstone will officially be placed over Green's grave on September 5th, which I'm assuming it's already been done, after she laid in anonymity for nearly a century.
Mm-hmm.
And the face is also etched there as well. Quote, I think for me, it gives me the courage. It gives me the motivation to push forward and make sure that you do something great in this world, that you leave a mark that people know about you. That was said by Hayes. So that's Aunt Jemima.
Mm-hmm.
Uncle Ben, like I said, it was a little harder to get more information on him
Mm-hmm.
because unlike Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben is a fictional character, but is um kind of inspired by real people per
Mm-hmm.
se in terms of the face you see
Right.
of Uncle Ben. So Frank Brown is potentially the real person who's featured on the rice packaging.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what you need to know about Frank Brown. What the product is changing. Well, we don't need to talk about what the product's changing the same too. We already talked about that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, the founder of Mars, Forrest E. Mars, first branded the rice product as the original converted rice brand in 1942. The name was thus changed to Uncle Ben's original converted brand rice in 1947.
Mm,
Uncle Ben was the name of a fictional character first used in 1946 as a reference to an African American Texan rice farmer. However, the company said the image used on the Uncle Ben packaging was a beloved Chicago chef and
mm,
waiter named Frank Brown.
mm.
So Mars announced in the summer that the Uncle Ben's brand would, quote, evolve, which suggested a change would be made to its branding. Um, so just a little more on this. We're gonna kind of go back to Uncle Ben, where he kind of so Uncle Ben does
Yeah.
indeed appear to have been a real person. Again, we
Mm,
talked about based on the rice farmer, the
mm,
picture of Uncle Ben was the waiter.
mm,
Um, So, according to the official Uncle Ben's Inc. website, he was a quote, an African American rice farmer known to rice millers in and around Houston for consistently producing the highest quality rice. I mean, I don't know if anyone's seen some Uncle Ben's rice. It's phenomenal. Like, I remember that.
right.
Again, I only ever had it with my dad because
Mm-hmm.
they would make Uncle Ben's rice. It was so good. It
Yeah,
was so good. Anyways,
yeah, yeah.
unfortunately, the site explains the details of Uncle Ben's life are lost to history, although they seem to be aware that he died sometime before the late 1940s when Gordon L. Harwell, the first president of Converted Rice Inc., which is the predecessor of Uncle Ben's Inc., and his partner decided to call the rice that they had been supplying exclusively to the armed forces during
Uh-huh.
World War II, Uncle Ben's converted brand rice. As for Aunt Jemima, we're going back to her too. Unfortunately, no Aunt Jemima, no Final H ever actually invented or poured in any maple syrup. So we're getting kind of these two different
Uh-huh.
things of what I talked about before and what we're talking about here. Because I kind of wanted to kind of put on both sides because I know it's a little unclear as to Aunt Jemima and is she real in that sense.
Right.
Um, The Quaker Oats Company is the owner of the Aunt Jemima brand, and according to a spokesperson, although there have been three different women who played the part in various promotions, the
Mm-hmm.
character was not based on any real person.
Mm,
Incidentally, the outline of the man on the front of the Quaker Oats containers is likewise the figment of someone's imagination. Had Wilford Brimley been around in the late 1800s, I'm sure his portrait would grace the containers instead. So kind of this, that's the thing is the Quaker Oats guy based on somebody?
mm-hmm.
Why does Aunt Jemima or Uncle Ben have to be based on somebody necessarily? And again, like Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben, I never thought that the Quaker Oats guy was a real person. Not really. Not really.
Mm,
So, I mean, if he was, cool. But I think that's just kind of the thing. I do know about the promotional um ads where three different women who again were paid like nothing.
mm-hmm.
One of them was actually chained to a desk while
Oh
doing
wow.
it. Yeah.
Wow.
Um it that I did hear.
Mm-hmm.
But it's mixed on whether or not the pancake mix and the maple syrup was actually created by an actual Black woman
Right.
and not the company itself. So that's kind of why I wanted to go touch it on both sides
Uh-huh.
with Aunt Jemima. So
Okay. All right.
yeah,
All right.
but that's basically it. Whatever the story is, at the end of the day, where at least Aunt Jemima is concerned,
Uh-huh.
there was three Black women that were used for the promotional ads
Uh-huh.
who were treated like dirt. Um, so at least where that's concerned, I think we can all agree that those women deserved a lot more
100%. Yeah.
and
They
a
did.
better treatment as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I agree 100. 100% on that. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Great episode. So this ends episode 76 of the Next Tape podcast. The Next Tape podcast is available on all podcast platforms. We also have a website called
Next
Tanyka.
take podcast dot pod wait, next take podcast dot podpage dot io. Again, link in the show notes.
Yeah. And where else were we at? Tanika?
Facebook and Instagram at Next Take Podcast and Twitter and TikTok at Next Take Pod.
Can also contact us on our email at mikeltanika@gmail.com. That is mikeltanika@gmail.com. So we talked about Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben. Um, if you want to know more, there's a lot of details on, articles on the web. Uh, if
Yeah, I'm gonna say just to say
yeah,
it is very light
yeah,
on there's a lot on Aunt Jemima,
yeah.
very light on Uncle Ben.
Mm-hmm.
But the articles are pretty much all the same
All the same. Okay.
for the most part of what I read with Aunt Jemima and
Right.
Uncle Ben. But again, it's like Uncle Ben is
Right.
really difficult to find an article that
Okay.
like gave something.
Okay.
Yeah, just
All right.
to make you all aware on that one.
Okay. There it is. So, anything else, Tanika, or that's about it?
I
Oh,
mean,
for the next episode for our Black History Month
yeah, we
series.
have one more, and that's where we're talking about Juneteenth.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
So I'm Mikel, and
and I'm Tanyka.
we're out until
Wait, hold on, because I don't remember. We are out until next week.
next week. Peace, guys.
Bye.
Bye.